Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another video. And what we're going to be talking about today is Tulsi Gabbard weighing in on the recent Kamala Harris interview on Fox. And what's interesting about this is if you break this interview down, there are many pieces of where you can take what Kamala Harris said and apply it to the questions that she was asked in the interview. And in that statement, or in those statements, she did not apply the same standards to herself as she applied to her opponent, Donald Trump. For instance, she made the statement, well, what happens during your administration, you need to be responsible for. And then when asked the follow-up question, well, how do we turn the page when it's been you in office for the last 3.5 years? Her response was, we're turning the page back on a decade. Okay, that makes sense. How? You know what I'm saying? That makes sense. How? Because if we look at the period of a decade, if I'm not mistaken, 4 out of 12 years, the White House was under Democrat control. Correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. But anyway, Tulsi Gabbard, you know, a thorn in Kamala Harris's side, her arch nemesis, appeared on Fox News, and she gave some pretty interesting commentary. React to it.
Vice President Kamala Harris pressed on her past support of taxpayer-funded sex changes for inmates and illegal immigrants in her interview with Bret Baier. Here's the soundbite.
Are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. Under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries.
You know what? You got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
You have to be responsible for what happened during your administration, while literally being asked about things going on under her current administration. And it doesn't really seem like she's taking any responsibility for any of those things that the Biden-Harris administration has done that are looked at as failures or suboptimal political activity. All right, let's continue.
Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard joins us with reaction. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is your reaction when you hear that soundbite?
It's one of the many examples of how Kamala Harris is lying to the American people and assuming that we're so stupid as just to believe her lies. We've seen the sound bites and the clips of her when she was advocating and patting herself on the back for the law changes that she brought about that would do this very thing, that would make sure that U.S. taxpayers are covering transgender surgeries for inmates. She advocated for the same for illegal immigrants coming across our border. She refuses to take responsibility and own up to her positions. If her views have changed, fine, people can change, but the American people deserve the respect enough to know exactly why she has changed. In that interview with Bret, there were a number of examples where she is lying about her past positions in order to try to create this new version of herself that she thinks will be more palatable to voters. And it's offensive in my view.
So this is such a neck and neck race. Every single vote, every single viewer, their vote will matter.
Yes.
And he pressed her on why, if he's so bad, why is he winning in the swing states? Listen to this.
Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
Listen,
are they stupid? What
God,
is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen.
And this is a good question because I think that this was a good strategy. And the reason why, if anybody that's watching this video pays attention to my content, I always try to have people pin what they say to a piece of data. And he used polling data and opinion data and asked her to explain why the numbers look how they look. If you pay close attention, right, in her answer, she does not give any opinion about why the numbers look how they look. Here's the issue with that. Those numbers look extremely unfavorable to her and her administration. Her own words, you have to be responsible for what happened during your administration. So if she's to explain those numbers, then she's going to have to explain, well, what went on that made so many people feel that the country is going in the wrong direction, and you all have had 3.5 years to change that direction. Why hasn't there been a change? Why do these numbers look the way that they look? And as you will see, she doesn't answer that, because in answering that question, she would then be holding herself, being part of the current administration, accountable for the opinions of the American people. Now, if she had answered that question and, possibly gave some self-critique or said, well, maybe the American people don't see certain things the way that we see them because we're on the inside, that may not have been the correct or best answer, but it would have at least been an answer addressing the data points. She doesn't address the data points at all, which Brett then asks, well, are the American people stupid? You must think that they're stupid if you don't answer the question that you're being asked.
To Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people.
So I want you guys to remember, the question was, explain the numbers. Somehow the answer has become Donald Trump is talking about a quote unquote enemy within. I don't know how we got there, but we're here.
Suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
They're so focused on that when they need to be focused on the economy. Everywhere we go, people say we can't afford groceries. They're worried about immigration, her immigration plan.
Yeah, it's an extension of what we've seen over the last 3.5 years from the Biden-Harris administration. People are continuing to be concerned about the high cost of living, and they remember how over this past term in office, they've patted themselves on the back, celebrating the success of Bidenomics and just saying, well, if the American people only knew how good we are and what a great job we did, then maybe we would be more popular. But ignoring the reality of the struggles that the American people are continuing to face and why so many of them want to see change. They need to see a better economy. They need to see secure borders. And again, if you get past the propaganda media and Kamala Harris's lies, this is where I think President Trump really has an opportunity, because he is the change candidate in this election.
And what's interesting, this is probably the first time, I think, in my lifetime at least, where we know what he stands for, because we had him for 4 years.
Exactly.
We know what she stands for. We had her for 3.5 years.
And that's the thing that I'm sharing with voters. I'm traveling across the country and sharing with them why I'm endorsing President Trump, but encouraging them, say, if you're undecided, if you have friends who are undecided, this is the first time we have a clear record. You don't have to just listen to rhetoric.
That's
we
true.
know exactly what kind of president both of them will be, and there's a huge contrast between the two.
Thank you so much for coming in,
see
and
you.
have fun at the Al Smith dinner
Thank
tonight.
you. See you there.
So there's that. I think Tulsi Gabbard gave a great breakdown in this very short clip, and there are many moments like this that can be dissected. And my question is, what do you all think is going on here? Do you all think that Kamala Harris is being sabotaged by her campaign managers? Do you think that these are answers that are really coming from Kamala Harris and she kind of is just lost in the water? As far as the interview goes, in my opinion, this was not a difficult interview. Simply because she came to Fox doesn't mean that it was a difficult interview. If you ask me, she didn't get any of the contentious, more difficult, antagonistic Fox News anchors or Fox News journalists. She got Brett Baier, who was, fairly mild. So if you ask me, every single interview that Kamala Harris has had, they've all been the easy interview. Again, just because this interview was on Fox does not default it to a difficult interview. She didn't have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham grilling her. Again, she had Brett Baier, which is very mild for a Fox interview. So if you ask me, she got the equivalent of Dana Bash on the Fox side. And I wouldn't say that Brett Baier held her hand through the interview, but Brett Baier was not, if you ask me, as overly aggressive as he could have been, being that he is coming from the other side to interview her. So all of this talk of she survived this interview from the quote unquote other side, if you ask me, a disgruntled Democrat would have given her a more difficult interview than what Brett Baier gave her. What we're looking at is Kamala Harris and her weakness in being able to think on her feet and in her ability to be able to handle media attention and articulate herself appropriately to be able to get her points across, which is extremely difficult, being that as the president of the United States, you'll be the representative and the spokesperson for America in many aspects. So these are things that I think that people should consider. I also don't think that it was a good move to wait right until the very end of the election to backload a bunch of activity that you know you're the most weak in. If you ask me, she should have done all of the difficult tasks up front, saved the Dana Bash interview or the easy interview for the end, and peppered the end of her campaign with the good interviews where the good clips would be able to be taken, so that people would have already forgotten about the bad interviews and that the viral damage and all of that from those would have been done. Again, this is what I think would have been the optimal thing to do if she had a good campaign team. But clearly, I don't think that her campaign team really is working for their pay, or either they're working like their pay and they're not really getting paid good enough. Whatever the case may be, I don't think that this was a good strategy. I honestly think that, as it has been proven, I think that Kamala Harris shouldn't have gone on an interview tour. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. When she wasn't going on the interview tour, for the most part, her numbers were slightly ahead of Trump. Since she's gone on these interview tours, it's completely exposed her public speaking ability, and it's also completely exposed her inability to be able to think effectively on her feet. And I think that these interviews, despite the fact that it was favoring negatively that she wasn't talking to the press, live action seeing her talk to the press is doing even more damage. But that's just my opinion. You guys let me know yours in the comment section. Also, make sure that you smash that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon twice, share this video to your social media, follow my other channels in my other social media, and I will catch you all on the next video. All right.